So basically this is a really simple kind of talk. We're just going to go through, well, basically what it says, my journey into cloud, how I started from kind of being on-prem data and then slowly moving into Google Cloud, and hopefully giving everyone a little bit of understanding of how to navigate through just the so many services that Google Cloud Platform, sorry, not AWS, has, and where to start and what to do and how to, yeah, just get through it really at the beginning of it all. So why do we even care about cloud? So I work predominantly in the data kind of sector, and one of the big ones, especially at the moment, is Google Analytics 4. So Google Analytics 4 is a whole new web analytics kind of backbone. And what you can do now is you can export that natively into Google Bigquery. So immediately all these companies that were just, purely reliant on Google Analytics Universal, they're going to have the option to start using cloud. From big to small companies, everyone's going to be able to export their data relatively easily. Bit caveated, it's not so easy sometimes. And that's going to really start, in my opinion, a big push into a lot more companies using cloud, especially for web data. And then what this kind of talk goes to is, okay, so what do you do? Where do you go after that? So I put everything into stages, and this was kind of my first stage. So when I started at MeasureLab, I kind of knew Google Analytics and I kind of knew a little bit of SQL, and that's kind of where I started. So hopefully everyone can see this, but what I deem now is going to be the track that everyone's going to take is they're going to grab Google Analytics 4, realize, hey, I can attach this to this thing called Bigquery, and it lets me keep all of my data forever. That's good. I like keeping my data. So that's the next thing. Just tag it onto the native connector and have it pull into Bigquery. The next kind of three things that I would always flag, and I'm sure someone more knowledgeable will shout out the AWS versions of all of these things, is now you can just wham on Data Studio, so you can just put Viz straight onto the top of that BigQuery and have like a free visualization of all that data, the same way that you would normally have it on top of your Google Analytics, but now you have all of your data forever and it will never go away. And then I would always flag looking at your billing account, because that's important. Now it's going to cost a little bit of money. It's not free anymore. Big sigh. But being able to look into that billing account, that will be fundamental to make sure that everyone's happy and you keep your job and you don't get people suddenly going, why have we spent thousands of pounds? I thought you were just putting all of your Google Analytics data into a warehouse. But yeah, that's a really great tool. Sometimes price inhibition is a big deal. Being able to understand, oh, well, the reason we don't use this is because it's really expensive. I don't want to use that, is a great reason not to use something. Then the next kind of thing that I would learn was basic IAMs. So identity access management, essentially. What kind of roles do I have to give myself for security? How do I get access to everything? And this was very simple. This was the kind of basic primary roles, owner, editor, viewer, and what I needed in order to, mess around with everything, basically. And then finally, I put it in here, the big move to cloud storage. I know that majority of companies use Drive, but I would start looking at, for a lot of your stuff, moving it to cloud storage. It's relatively cheap. Everyone can use it. There's no limitations. It basically works like a file storage. And what you start doing there is now you start opening up the buckets, and you start opening up all of that information to be able to be used, exported, and sent around the whole cloud infrastructure. So a fancy little animation, maybe. Ooh, look at that. There's stage 1. Ooh, there's stage 2. Interesting. Maybe. Okay, cool. Awesome. Whew. Worked. Fantastic. So this was the next kind of steps, is to start understanding advanced IAMs. What do all those permissions mean? Do I need to give everyone owner access to my project? Hint, no. So that was kind of what I did. I started learning what all those permissions meant, why we were using certain permissions, what ones were important, and which ones were something that I didn't know, but it came in one of the already kind of classified ones, so everyone got it. So that's a really great thing. Fantastic thing that GCP does. I don't know if AWS is, probably does. It has a little kind of algorithm that works out, if you give some roles, it will say, hey, hang on, this person's only using like 5 of the roles you've given them, and you've given them 5,000 permissions. Maybe don't give them all of those. So that's a great way to kind of work out what people are doing and limit it down and work with the kind of security, less is more kind of idea. Another thing is also you can start leveraging all of the Google OAuths and the Google groups. This was awesome. Basically, for me, this was to say, I'm going to make a Google group. You add everyone into the Google group that needs a certain type of access. You manage the Google group, and that one Google group, I will treat it as a user, and anyone in that Google group gets the same IAMs. That means I don't have to manage the Google group. That means I don't have to worry if someone has left the company. That's not my job. That person will just disappear out and they won't have access to it. So that's a nice little trick. Also a great way to do it for contractors. You can make a Google group for your contractors, give them all the permissions that they want, and then delete them out of the Google group and never see them again. So the next kind of steps was to shore up my SQL. So I'm sure the same thing happens in Redshift, but you can start using arrays, you can start using DDL, and you can start writing looping scripts. All of that is going to make it real killer and allows you to do whatever you want basically on the data that's already in your warehouse. The next 2 is also starting to use the Bigquery transfer service. This is super great. It's free, firstly. I like free things. I like the free pizza. But it also allows you to shift data around. S3 buckets into Bigquery, for example. Google Analytics add data into Bigquery. With basically a couple of clicks. It's a very basic, but quite robust kind of a ETL tool to a degree. Well, there's no transformation. EL tool. And for the majority of companies, that's all they need. They just wanted the Google Ads data in there. They just want all of the data that they put in a Google Cloud bucket into their BigQuery. And for all those use cases, boom, straight into the data transfer service, super easy, sets up in a couple of minutes, done. The next kind of step is to start moving into the BigQuery APIs and start working in Google Colabs. So for those who use Python, I don't know how many is in this room, but that's where I started learning Python and being able to look at everything programmatically and be able to start messing around there. Ooh, it's coming. There we go. There's stage 1. There's stage 2. Ooh, stage 3. Interesting. Okay, so this was getting slowly more and more towards a more dev-like approach, especially in data. So data dev to a degree, moving into cloud logging, making sure that I had some sort of data observation in check, make sure that every kind of daily ingest is going in, and then moving to cloud functions. Cloud functions, I think the AWS one is Lambda functions, maybe. Yes, good, right, I'm correct. And basically that's serverless kind of applications, and allows you to basically act on a trigger and then push something to a endpoint, which is fantastic. It basically means you can get away with it doing a lot. In GCP, they can go to 16 gigs of memory and run for nearly 60, I think it's 60 minutes now. So you can shift a lot of your work into cloud functions and not really have to touch any of the other services, which is fantastic. Bigquery also has AutoML, so I started kind of messing around with that, messing around with machine learning and understanding how that all works. But Bigquery AutoML is kind of pseudo SQL-like, which means that it's a great step to move from Bigquery to start looking at machine learning, which is what I did. Also, I'm sure anyone that works in dev is happy to see that I put Git there, and started to do versioning for all of my Python, working through Cloud Build, which mirrors the repos and then allows me to push to development. And then there's also Cloud Secrets, which are awesome. They're another added security where basically you can hide all your API keys, all your passwords, and not have them directly in your code, which is a good thing, I've been told by people. And finally, the big boy at the end is Cloud Run. Cloud Run is the big brother of Cloud Functions, essentially. It's fantastic. It's a little bit more permanent than the Cloud Functions. If you can't do something in Cloud Functions, chances are it's hitting the limitations, such as Cloud Functions can't run browsers and stuff like that. Cloud Run can, so you can do Selenium scraping in Cloud Run and things like that, which are a little bit more complex. Last one, I promise. Final time. And finally, last, is to move into more DevOps and MLOps. This is kind of where I am now and what I'm kind of learning on the side. Move into apps, so Dash and Streamlit for being able to push productionized code into a place where a client can see it. Vertex AI, which is the AI kind of workbench in GCP. Fantastic. I saw it over the weekend and now I have been messing around with it. R&D, Dara. This is the only interesting thing here is the way around that I learned data flow and data prep. I learned data prep first because it's in a pretty UI and I don't have to worry about the code, and it's a little bit more expensive, but it's not crazy expensive, especially for the clients that I've used it on. Allows me to understand that, and the backbones of that is data flow, and the backbones of data flow is Apache Beam. And then finally PubSub, that's the messaging service, which allows for a little bit more management of those triggers, and then Cloud Composer, which runs basically Airflow, which allows orchestration.